Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the fading glow of the afternoon sun, a garment radiated with an otherworldly luminescence. Suspended from the closet, a lavender bridesmaid dress, its chiffon folds dancing delicately in the gentle breath of the AC, seemed to come alive. Cashton stood transfixed, captivated by the enchantment of this simple act of retrieval. It had begun as a straightforward task. Dean, his brother, had a favor to ask. He needed the dress from Miranda's home, which conveniently lined up with Cashton's daily commute back home.
"It's easy,"
Dean assured him.
"Miranda said she left everything on her bed."
But now, standing alone in the quiet apartment, Cashton couldn't tear his eyes away from the dress. His fingers reached out, almost involuntarily, to touch the soft material. The lavender hue seemed to shimmer, transforming slightly as he moved the fabric between his fingers. The apartment was silent, except for the distant hum of traffic outside. Cashton checked his watch. It was just past 2. The bridal shop closed at 6. He had time. A thought that had been lurking in the back of his mind for weeks, months, years, if he was being honest, suddenly pushed forward with irresistible force. What if? Just once. Just to see. No one would know. Cashton set down his keys and wallet on the small entryway table. His brown hair fell across his forehead as he bent to examine the accessories box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, were a pair of silver heels and a delicate pearl necklace. His heart hammered against his ribcage as he lifted the dress from its hanger, the material whispering against itself. He held it against his chest, looking down at how it might fall against his body. He was slender, had always been slender, not that different from Miranda's build, though she was shorter.
"This is crazy,"
he muttered to himself. But even as the words left his mouth, he was already unbuttoning his blue work shirt. 20 minutes later, he stood before Miranda's full-length mirror, barely recognizing the person staring back. The lavender dress fit surprisingly well. The silver heels, thank goodness he and Miranda wore close to the same size, added 4 inches to his height, transforming his posture. The pearl necklace rested elegantly against his collarbones. Cashton's brown hair, which he'd been growing out slightly longer than usual, softened his features when he brushed it away from his forehead, letting it frame his face. His eyes, usually a nondescript hazel, somehow looked greener against the lavender of the dress. He turned slightly, watching how the dress moved with him. Something that had been knotted tight inside him for as long as he could remember seemed to loosen, just a fraction.
"This is..."
he whispered, unable to find the words to complete the thought. The sound of a key in the lock shattered the moment. Frozen in terror, Cashton watched the door swing open. His mind raced through impossible scenarios. Diving behind the couch, locking himself in the bathroom, somehow explaining why he was wearing a bridesmaid's dress complete with heels and pearls. But there was nowhere to hide. No explanation that would make sense. Dean stood in the doorway, briefcase in hand, mouth slightly open as he took in the scene before him.
"Cash?"
His voice was quiet, confused. Cashton couldn't speak. His mouth opened, but no sound emerged. His hands moved automatically to cover himself, as if that could somehow undo what his brother was seeing. Dean closed the door behind him, setting his briefcase down slowly.
"I thought you'd have dropped the dress off by now. When you didn't answer my texts, I came to check. I didn't mean to. Dean, I can explain."
Cashton finally managed, his voice cracking.
"It's not I was just...
But the words died in his throat. What could he possibly say? Dean moved carefully across the room, as if approaching a frightened animal. He sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes never leaving Kashtan.
You don't need to explain,
he said softly.
At least, not if you don't want to.
Kashtan blinked, confused by the lack of shock or disgust in his brother's voice.
I don't understand.
Dean rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous gesture Kashtan recognized from childhood.
Cash, we share a computer at the apartment. Have for years.
The implication hung in the air between them. You've seen... Kashtan couldn't finish the sentence. Dean nodded.
The transgender support sites, the forums, the medical information about hormone therapy.
He paused.
I didn't mean to invade your privacy, but I've known for a while.
The room seemed to tilt slightly. Kashtan reached out to steady himself against the dresser, the silver heels suddenly unstable beneath him.
Why didn't you say anything?
His voice was barely audible. Dean shrugged, his expression gentle.
It wasn't my place. I figured you'd talk about it when you were ready.
Tears welled in Kashtan's eyes, blurring his vision. His carefully constructed walls were crumbling, and he couldn't tell if he was terrified or relieved.
I don't know what to say,
he whispered.
You don't have to say anything right now.
Dean stood up, crossing to where Kashtan stood, trembling.
But I want you to know something. You're my sibling. Nothing changes that. Nothing ever could.
The tears spilled over, tracking silently down Kashtan's cheeks. Dean pulled him into a hug, careful not to crush the delicate dress.
But what about Miranda? The wedding?
Kashtan asked, against his brother's shoulder. Dean pulled back, his hands steady on Kashtan's shoulders.
Miranda is the most open-minded person I know. It's one of the reasons I'm marrying her.
He smiled.
As for the wedding, well, that's still 6 months away. A lot can happen in 6 months.
Hope, fragile but undeniable, unfurled in Kashtan's chest.
Let me take the dress back to the shop,
Dean said, squeezing Kashtan's shoulder gently.
You take some time. And when you're ready to talk more about this, I'm here.
Kashtan nodded, unable to speak through the emotion clogging his throat. As Dean carefully helped him out of the dress, handling the delicate fabric with surprising care, Kashtan felt as though he was stepping across a threshold he hadn't even realized existed until today. 3 months later, the name Jade was becoming more familiar, both to herself and to those around her. The brown-haired woman adjusted the collar of her teal blouse as she sat in the waiting room, her leg bouncing nervously beneath her matching teal skirt. "Jade Kingston!" the nurse called, clipboard in hand. She stood, smoothing her skirt with slightly trembling hands. "That's me." Following the nurse down the hallway, Jade reflected on the whirlwind of the past few months. After that afternoon in Miranda's apartment, everything had changed with dizzying speed. Coming out to Miranda, who had indeed been wonderfully supportive, starting therapy with a gender specialist, legally changing her name, beginning the process of updating all her identification. And today, finally, her first appointment for hormone therapy. "Dr. Martinez will be with you shortly," the nurse said with a smile, leaving Jade in the small examination room. Jade checked her reflection in her compact mirror, tucking a strand of brown hair behind her ear. Her hair had grown out more in the past months, now reaching just below her chin in a layered bob that framed her face nicely. The stylist Miranda had recommended was a miracle worker, A knock on the door preceded Dr. Martinez's entrance. The doctor, a woman in her 50s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, smiled as she sat on the rolling stool. "Jade, it's wonderful to meet you. I've reviewed your file and the referral from Dr. Thompson." She flipped through some papers on her clipboard. "You're here to discuss beginning hormone replacement therapy, correct?" Jade nodded, her throat suddenly dry.
Yes, that's right.
Dr. Martinez set aside the clipboard and leaned forward slightly.
Before we get into the medical details, I want to say congratulations. This is a significant step, and it takes courage to live authentically.
Something about the doctor's matter-of-fact kindness made Jade's eyes well up. "Thank you," she managed. The next hour was filled with information, side effects, timelines, expectations, risks, benefits. Dr. Martinez answered every question patiently, never rushing. "I do want to emphasize that this is a marathon, not a sprint," she said as the appointment wound down. "The changes will be gradual, and some days might feel frustratingly slow, but we'll be monitoring closely and adjusting as needed." Jade nodded, clutching the prescription in her hand. "I understand. I've waited this long. I can handle gradual." As she left the clinic, Jade's phone buzzed with a text from Dean. "How did it go? Coffee after?" She smiled, texting back a quick yes before heading toward their usual cafe. Dean was waiting at an outdoor table, 2 steaming mugs in front of him. "Well?" he asked as she sat down, pushing a latte toward her. Jade held up the prescription. "It's official. I start tomorrow." Dean's face broke into a wide grin. "That's amazing, sis." He reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done any of this without you," Jade said, her voice thick with emotion. "You and Miranda have been..."
"Family,"
Dean finished simply.
"That's what we are."
They sipped their coffee, discussing the upcoming wedding preparations. Miranda had insisted on adjusting the wedding party to include Jade as a bridesmaid rather than the groomsmen she'd originally been slated to be.
"Miranda wants to take you shopping for your dress next weekend,"
Dean said.
"She's thinking teal for the bridesmaids."
Jade smiled, remembering the teal outfit she'd chosen for today. "Teal seems appropriate." Dean checked his watch. "Speaking of Miranda, I'm supposed to meet her at the florist in 20 minutes. Want to come?" "I can't today. I have that job interview at 4. Another big change, leaving her old position at the accounting firm for a fresh start at a new company where she could begin as Jade from day 1. "That's right. Text me how it goes." Dean stood, dropping a few bills on the table. "Dinner at our place tomorrow? We can celebrate your new hormones." Jade laughed. "That sounds weirdly festive, but yes." As Dean walked away, Jade sat for a moment longer, watching people pass by on the street. Someone who didn't know her story might just see a woman in a teal outfit, enjoying coffee on a pleasant afternoon. The thought made her smile. "Hold still. I'm almost done," Miranda murmured, bobby pin between her lips as she secured another section of Jade's brown hair. Jade sat at the vanity in the bridal suite, watching Miranda's expert fingers work through the mirror. Outside, the late spring sunshine bathed the garden venue in golden light. The wedding was set to begin in just over an hour. "There!" Miranda stepped back to admire her handiwork. Jade's hair, now falling past her shoulders after 6 months of growth and some strategic extensions, had been arranged in an elegant updo with a few soft tendrils framing her face. It's beautiful, Miranda. Thank you. Jade turned her head slightly, admiring the way the pearl pins caught the light. Don't make me cry and ruin my makeup, Miranda warned with a wobbly smile. I'm emotional enough today as it is. The door to the suite opened, and the other two bridesmaids, Miranda's sisters Courtney and Elise, entered carrying garment bags. Dresses have officially arrived, Courtney announced, hanging them on the rack by the window. She pulled out a gown in shimmering teal chiffon and held it up. This one's yours, Jade. Jade ran her fingers over the delicate material, remembering another dress in lavender that had changed the course of her life half a year ago. It's perfect, she said softly. Miranda squeezed her shoulder. It's going to look amazing on you. As the women helped each other into their dresses, Jade marveled at how normal it all felt. The casual intimacy of the bridal suite, the shared excitement, the gentle teasing and laughter. She was just one of the bridesmaids, one of the women preparing for a celebration. Can someone zip me? She asked, holding her hair out of the way. Elise stepped forward, securing the back of the teal gown. There you go. Turn around. Let's see the full effect. Jade turned, and the soft gasps from the other women made her blush. Jade, you look stunning, Miranda said, her eyes glistening. The dress hugged Jade's newly curved figure, courtesy of 6 months of hormone therapy, before flowing gracefully to the floor. The teal complemented her complexion perfectly, making her hazel eyes appear more green than brown. You all look beautiful, came a voice from the doorway. Dean stood there in his tuxedo, his expression a mixture of awe and happiness, as he looked at his soon-to-be wife and the bridal party. You're not supposed to see the bride before the ceremony, Courtney scolded, moving to block his view of Miranda. Dean laughed, holding up his hands in surrender. I'm just here for a moment with my sister, if you don't mind. Jade stepped toward him, and Dean led her out into the hallway, closing the door behind them. Everything okay? She asked. Dean nodded. More than okay. I just wanted a moment to tell you, I don't think I've ever seen you look as happy as you have these past months. He paused, his voice growing softer. Or as beautiful as you look today. Jade blinked rapidly, trying not to smudge her carefully applied makeup. If you make me cry, Miranda will kill us both. Dean laughed, pulling her into a careful hug that wouldn't crush her dress. No crying, just, I'm happy you're here, as yourself. Jade squeezed him back. Me too. A photographer appeared at the end of the hallway. Bridesmaids in 5 minutes for pre-ceremony photos. Dean released her. That's your cue. I'll see you at the altar, sis. Jade watched him walk away, then turned back toward the bridal suite, her teal dress rustling softly with each step. 6 months ago, she could never have imagined this moment. Standing in the sunshine, about to walk down the aisle as her authentic self, with her legal documentation matching who she truly was. The door to the bridal suite opened, and Miranda's face appeared. Ready for photos? Jade smiled. Ready for everything. The reception was in full swing, the dance floor crowded with guests moving to the band's rendition of a popular song. Jade sat at the head table, taking a moment to rest her feet after dancing in heels for the past hour. Her teal dress sparkled under the fairy lights strung across the garden venue's ceiling.
This seat taken?
A male voice asked from beside her. Jade looked up to see a man about her age, with dark hair and a charming smile, gesturing to the empty chair next to hers.
"It's all yours,"
she replied, taking a sip of her champagne. He sat down, loosening his tie slightly.
"I'm Ethan, friend of the groom from college."
"Jade, I'm Dean's sister." Ethan's eyebrows rose slightly.
"Dean's sister."
Huh. He always talked about having a brother in college. A brief moment of panic fluttered in Jade's chest before she reminded herself that she had nothing to hide. "That was a long time ago," she said simply. Something in her expression must have communicated the rest, because understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. To his credit, he didn't miss a beat.
"Well, it's lovely to meet you, Jade. Dean mentioned you work in finance?"
The conversation flowed easily after that. Ethan was an architect with a quick wit and an attentive way of listening that made Jade feel like the most interesting person in the room. They discovered a shared love of obscure indie films and a mutual hatred of cilantro. "It tastes like soap," they both declared simultaneously, then laughed. When the band started playing a slower song, Ethan stood and offered his hand.
"Would you like to dance?"
Jade hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "I'd love to." On the dance floor, Ethan's hand rested lightly on her waist, respectful but not distant. As they moved to the music, Jade caught Dean's eye across the room. Her brother winked at her from where he danced with Miranda, his new wife's head resting on his shoulder.
"So,"
Ethan said, recapturing her attention. "I don't suppose you'd be interested in getting coffee sometime. There's this place downtown that shows classic films on Monday nights." Jade felt a flutter of both excitement and apprehension. Dating was a frontier she hadn't yet explored in her transition. "I'd like that," she said, realizing as the words left her mouth that she genuinely meant them. "Though, I should probably tell you," Ethan shook his head gently.
"You don't owe me your story, Jade. Not unless you want to share it."
She studied his face, finding nothing but sincerity there. "Thank you, but I do want to. Just maybe not in the middle of a dance floor." He smiled.
"Coffee, then. And conversation."
The song ended, transitioning into something more upbeat. Before they could decide whether to continue dancing, Miranda appeared at Jade's elbow. "Sorry to interrupt, but it's almost time for the bouquet toss," she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief as she glanced between Jade and Ethan. "Duty calls," Jade told Ethan with a small smile. "Save me another dance?" "Absolutely." As Miranda led her away, Jade glanced back to see Ethan watching her go, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "He's cute," Miranda whispered, following her gaze. "And Dean says he's one of the good ones." Jade felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "We're just talking." "Mm-hmm," Miranda hummed disbelievingly, gathering the other single women for the bouquet toss. Standing among the small crowd, Jade felt a sense of belonging that still sometimes surprised her. 6 months ago, she had been terrified of what her future might hold. Now, here she was, her brown hair styled elegantly, wearing a beautiful teal dress at her brother's wedding, having just danced with an attractive man who wanted to see her again. Miranda turned her back to the group, counted to 3, and tossed her bouquet over her shoulder. The flowers arced through the air, and without thinking, Jade reached up. The bouquet landed squarely in her hands. A cheer went up from the crowd. Jade laughed, holding the flowers aloft. Across the room, she caught Ethan's eye again. He raised his glass to her in a silent toast. Later, as the night wound down, Jade found herself on the venue's terrace, enjoying a moment of quiet as the party continued inside. The spring night was cool but pleasant, stars visible above despite the ambient light from the city. The door opened behind her, and Dean joined her at the railing. "Hiding from your new admirer?" he teased. Jade chuckled. "Just taking a breather. It's been a big day." Dean nodded, looking out at the darkened gardens beyond the terrace. "I was just thinking about last Thanksgiving, when you weren't sure if you should come home for the holidays. And now look at you." Jade thought back to those difficult days when she was just beginning her transition and worried about facing extended family. Dean and Miranda had insisted she come, promising to support her no matter what. It had been challenging, but ultimately healing. "It's been quite a journey," she admitted. "Any regrets?" Dean asked softly. Jade shook her head without hesitation. "Not a single one." Dean bumped her shoulder gently with his. "Good.
Because I've never seen you this happy. This yourself."
They stood in companionable silence for a moment.
"So,"
Dean said eventually, a smile in his voice. "Ethan, huh?" Jade rolled her eyes. "We're getting coffee, that's all."
"For now,"
Dean said, waggling his eyebrows exaggeratedly.
"Shouldn't you be with your wife? It is your wedding day after all."
Dean laughed. "Miranda's the one who sent me to find you. She wants to do one last dance with the entire wedding party before we leave." Jade linked her arm through her brother's. "Then let's not keep the bride waiting." As they walked back inside, Jade caught her reflection in the glass doors, her teal dress glowing under the lights, her brown hair still perfectly arranged despite hours of dancing, her face flushed with happiness. The person looking back at her was finally, truly, herself. 2 years later, Jade stood in front of a different mirror, in a different dress. This one was white, with delicate lace appliques and a modest train. Her brown hair, now grown past her shoulder blades, had been arranged in loose waves with small white flowers woven throughout. "You look absolutely breathtaking," Miranda said from behind her, adjusting the veil carefully. Jade turned, her dress rustling softly.
"Are you sure it's not too much?
The lace on the sleeves is so detailed and—" "It's perfect," Miranda interrupted firmly. "Ethan is going to burst into tears the moment he sees you." Jade smiled, thinking of her soon-to-be husband waiting for her at the altar. Their coffee date had turned into dinner, which had turned into weekend trips and eventually moving in together. Ethan had proposed 6 months ago, on the anniversary of their first meeting at Dean and Miranda's wedding. A knock at the door preceded Dean's entrance. He stopped short when he saw her, his eyes widening.
"Wow,"
he said simply. "Just, wow." Jade felt tears threatening and blinked rapidly. "Don't make me cry. The makeup artist will never forgive us." Dean crossed the room and took her hands in his. "Sorry. It's just... I'm so happy for you, sis." Miranda discreetly slipped out of the room, giving the siblings a moment alone. "I wouldn't be here without you," Jade said softly. "That day, when you walked in on me in that lavender dress, you changed everything." Dean shook his head.
"You changed everything. I just stood by you while you became who you were always meant to be."
Jade squeezed his hands. "Either way, I'm grateful, and I'm so glad you're walking me down the aisle today." After their parents had struggled to accept Jade's transition, eventually coming around but still maintaining a certain distance, it had been an easy decision to ask Dean to give her away.
"It's an honor,"
Dean said, his voice thick with emotion. He cleared his throat.
"And speaking of which, it's almost time. Are you ready?"
Jade took a deep breath, smoothing her hands over the white fabric of her wedding dress.
"Ready."
They walked together to the doors of the small chapel where Ethan waited. The wedding was intimate, just close friends and family who had supported them both. Through the doors, Jade could hear the string quartet begin the processional.
"Here we go,"
Dean whispered, offering his arm. The doors opened, and everyone rose to their feet. Jade's eyes immediately found Ethan at the end of the aisle, his expression exactly as Miranda had predicted, eyes shining with unshed tears, mouth slightly open in wonder. As she walked toward him on Dean's arm, Jade reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the terrified person trembling in a borrowed lavender dress, to the confident woman she was today, walking toward her future in white. When they reached the altar, Dean placed her hand in Ethan's with a smile, then stepped back to take his place as best man.
"You're stunning,"
Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. Jade smiled at him, squeezing his hand. "So are you." The officiant began the ceremony, but Jade barely heard the words. She was too focused on Ethan's face, on the love reflected there, on the incredible reality that this was her life now. When it came time for their vows, Ethan spoke of finding her across a crowded reception, of knowing even then that she was special. He promised to stand by her through whatever life brought them, to be her partner and her champion. When Jade's turn came, she took a steadying breath. "Ethan, you came into my life at exactly the right moment. When I was learning to be comfortable in my own skin, you saw me, truly saw me, from the very beginning. You never asked me to be anything other than who I am." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I promise to love you with the same acceptance and understanding you've always shown me. To build a life with you filled with honesty, laughter, and endless cups of coffee.
"To be your wife, your partner, and your friend, for all the days of our lives."
Ethan's eyes glistened as they exchanged rings and were pronounced husband and wife. Their kiss was sweet and perfect, accompanied by applause from their gathered loved ones. As they turned to face their guests as a married couple, Jade caught Dean's eye in the front row. Her brother raised his glass in a silent toast, and Jade knew he was remembering, as she was, that pivotal moment 2.5 years ago when everything changed. From a borrowed lavender dress to a wedding gown of her own, from terror to joy, from hiding to celebration. As Ethan led her back down the aisle, Jade realized with perfect clarity that she had finally arrived, not just at her wedding day, but at herself. And it was more beautiful than she could have ever imagined.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!